I'm just waiting to get live. Okay, perfect. So I am live on Facebook as well as Instagram, and we are talking about nutrition all this month. I am super, super, super excited. One of my favorite topics. So if you are joining me live, say a quick hi. Hi, Devika. I can see you on Instagram. Thanks for joining in live. This is the month of nutrition. We are super, super, super excited, like all the nutrition fans and nutritionists. And this is the month I'm going to share a lot about Ayurvedic nutrition as well. So stay tuned, and I'll be going live on my Facebook page as well as Instagram every single day. So that's my challenge to myself. So today I'm doing the Wellness Wednesday at noon, and the Wednesdays will be at noon, but every single day, 9 o'clock, for a quick bite on nutrition, for a quick, talk. I'll be live every single day. So that's the thing I'm going to do for the month of March. And super interesting thing, right? So today let's talk about, the biggest nutrition myths that are ruining your health, right? So I have seen this in my practice that a lot of the times, a celebrity would endorse a certain diet, or an influencer would talk about juicing, or a certain kind of product they've tried and they've had fantastic results, and then they start advocating everybody to do the same thing, right? I have also seen this in the nutrition world, right? That everybody will be like, oh, I tried this worked fantastic, I lost 20 pounds, and now you try this, right? But there are so many myths related to that, right? So whether we talk about calories, and I'm going to talk about the 10 most common food and nutrition myths that are ruining your health, and I have seen this in my uh, practice, right? So the number one thing that I have seen in my practice is the low calorie diet, right? So low calorie diet is the biggest myth, that if you want to go for weight loss, or if you want to lose weight, right, low calorie is the way to go. So this is the biggest myth I have seen, and it works in some people when they have, they are binge eaters, or they are eating really, really bad foods. But a lot of the times when I see my clients, who are classically in their 40s, they or 50s, some of them have early menopause, or some of them are struggling with menopause right now, and they go on low calorie diets because suddenly they've started gaining this weight, and now they want to go low calories and they want to lose the weight, right? So the biggest myth is low calorie diet is going to help you lose weight, because if you are somebody who's extremely tired, who has the afternoon crashes, if you are constantly craving carbs, one of the signs, like these are signs of adrenal imbalance. If your adrenals or stress glands are not functioning well, and if you go low calorie, if you go low carb, you will be further exhausted, right? So that is not the way to go. So you will further end up storing the weight, you will start storing the body fat, you will not release any body fat, right? Every person has a set number, it's called the basal metabolic rate. So it will vary individually, and basal metabolic rate is the amount of calories you need for your body's upkeep, right? So just to breathe, just to live, you need to have a certain amount of calories every single day, and that's the basal metabolic number. And if your daily intake would be lower than the BMR, you will start storing fat, your body will not release any fat. So that's the number one thing, or the number one myth I've come across, that low calorie diet is the way to go for weight loss. Absolutely not. Second is a very common diet that's been, promoted. It was like really popular in India. I've seen a lot of nutritionists promote it, that eating 8 meals a day, right? 6 to 8 small meals, frequent meals is the way to go if you're looking at weight loss or staying healthy, right? Realistically, having 8 meals is not the best option, especially if your digestion is not working well, right? So if you are an athlete, and if you're training for a specific, session, it's a different story altogether. But for a general person to have 6 to 8 small meals every day, especially if you have lower digestion or poor digestive capacity, you will end up creating what we call ama, or digestive toxicity, and that will create more health issues, right? So You can have 2 to 3 meals a day. Some of them, if you have a very strong digestive capacity, which we also talk about 𝗡𝘂𝘁𝗵𝘀 in Ayurveda, or hypermetabolism, you might require more food. But 6 to 8 small frequent meals a day is not the way to go for everyone. It is going to ruin your digestion. It's going to create a lot of food sensitivities in a period of time, right? So that's not the best thing. So the low fat diet, was promoted a few years ago, and unfortunately it's still there, right? I have seen so many clients talk about the third myth, which is that high fat foods are unhealthy, right? So, or high cholesterol foods are unhealthy for everyone. And then they will get rid of all the cholesterol containing foods or high fat foods. But fat is required for your brain function. Cholesterol is required for your hormones, right? Hormonal synthesis. So if you are avoiding fat, and if you are going for the artificially sweetened, or the flavored foods, or the unnatural foods which have tons of sugar just to mimic the flavor and give you some kind of a tingle to your taste bud, you are doing it wrong, right? So high fat foods are not unhealthy. High fat should be had in moderation. In Ayurveda, when we look at certain texts, we promote having small amounts of ghee at each meal, right? So meals should be had along with a little bit of ghee. You can use it in your dal, you can use a bit of butter to saute your vegetables, or you can have some nice olive oil as a dressing on your salads if you're into salads, right? But high fat foods are not unhealthy. High fat foods being unhealthy is the myth number 3 that I've encountered in my practice. Number 4 is the opposite of that fat foods are unhealthy. So I have seen so many nutritionists today promote the keto diet, right? Everybody from influencers to models to like every person on the planet today is promoting keto diet for weight loss, right? And keto is something I gave it a try myself. So the reason I tried keto was I wanted to see how keto diet works for a kapha prakriti person, right? And it did not work well for me. I felt fantastic the first few days, right? The first 2 weeks were like really good, but the amount of fat that I had to intake on a daily basis to keep up with the keto, to go into ketogenesis, was just not suitable for a kapha type of personality, right? So keto is not the best weight loss diet for everyone. That is a big, big, big myth, right? If you are having issues with your gallbladder, if your gallbladder function, is not good, if you don't have a gallbladder, right? So that's the number one thing. If you're not digesting fat, so you could have gallbladder, it could be sludgy, bile could be sludgy, could be one thing, or there could be issues with fat digestion, right? And most people do keto wrong. When you talk about lazy keto, a lot of the times you're having high amounts of fat with high amounts of carbs or something, and you're not going to be able to create ketones from the fat, right? So keto is not the best diet for weight loss. It does not work for everyone. I had interviewed a cardiologist from Toronto who also talked about seeing a lot of clogged arteries in people who were into doing ketogenic diets, right? So that's something you have to be mindful about. Now, the another one myth, a fifth myth is going to be about macros again. This is going to be about high protein diet, right? So in Canada, most my clients have enough protein in the diet, or high protein in the diet, right? Yesterday I had a nice session with a client, and she was really happy because she found a lot of answers to why she was feeling how she was feeling, like she was feeling miserable even though she was eating everything, right? Right according to her, or right about what the mainstream would promote. She was having 3 eggs for breakfast, she was having chicken for lunch, she was having some beef for dinner, right? So she had a high protein diet, and she was working out with weights for at least 3 years, right? She was somebody who was consistent with weight training. Interestingly, what we found was that, she complained of not losing any weight, not feeling any stronger, and she actually had low muscle mass, right? So high protein diets do not mean fat loss. High protein diets are not always healthy. And sometimes when you have a lot of inflammation in the body, or if you're eating the wrong type of protein for you, your body is not even assimilating the protein that you're eating, right? So that is something you have to be, mindful of, that high protein diets are not necessary. You need smaller amounts of protein at each meal. That's the one thing I promote in my practice. But high protein diets, loading up with on protein shakes, energy bars or protein bars, are absolutely unnecessary in my opinion, right? So if you are watching this live, and we've talked about 6 things so far, if you can talk, like, tell me which of the myths you had been a victim to. Have you followed any of these myths, and which of the myths are you following? I'm going to say a quick hi to Vrinda's here, Twigtails is here, Dr. Heels is here, Nithi is here, Dr. Nikita is here. Nice to see you, Dr. Nikita. Pallavi is here, Dr. Sonal Singhal is here, Nehal Patel, Laura Plumb, Dr. Muhammad, Dr. Nirupama. So we have quite a bit of people live on Instagram, which is fantastic. So we talked about the first 5 myths. Low calories does not mean weight loss. The second myth was that you need to eat 6 to 8 small frequent meals for optimum health. That's a myth. The third myth is that high fat foods are unhealthy. The fourth myth is that keto is best for everyone for weight loss. Big myth. And the fifth one is high protein diet is necessary for everyone. So these are 5 myths I've covered so far. The sixth one, again, is something that I see a lot in my practice. And we have a big perception when it comes to weight and body image or body type, right? So a lot of the times when you look at people who are skinny, who are not gaining any weight, right, you will perceive them to be healthy, and maybe you have that friend who's like, oh, I can eat whatever I want, and I don't gain any weight, but I just feel tired, I don't feel as great. Or one of your friend, they can eat anything they want, but they have a little bit of a belly which doesn't seem to go away, right? So skinny does not mean healthy. Skinny just means skinny, nothing else, right? A lot of the times, and I've again spoken about this, that in my practice, when I do body composition reports for my clients, I have seen people to have a really low body mass index, sometimes 24 or even 20, 21, and they will have a higher body fat, nearly 40%, right? So your body mass index will give you a number which will tell you whether you are in the overweight category or the obese category or the normal category. But body fat is the best indicator of your internal inflammation state. If you are inflamed, you will hold on to a lot of body fat, right? And skinny does not mean healthy, because you could be skinny and you could have a lot of visceral fat, which is fat around your organs, which is even more dangerous. So that's the sixth myth. The seventh one is more about nutrition, right? So everybody will have a heavy breakfast. They come to me and they're like, oh, I have bacon and eggs for breakfast. I love to start my day really, healthy and really with a heavy breakfast so I can keep going throughout the day, right? So if you look from an Ayurvedic perspective, the number one thing to understand is morning, when you have just woken up, is also not the time where your digestion is at its peak, right? Afternoon time, when you start moving your body, your digestion will start kicking in, right? If you are somebody who's active, if you've had a fantastic workout in the morning, it's a completely different story. But for most people, if you have just woken up, you haven't even moved your body, and you go for that heavy meal of eggs with bacon, or 2 toasts with peanut butter, or bananas and oatmeal or anything, right? It is going to be heavier for you, right? It will make you sluggish, especially if you have a weaker digestion. So protein is not the most important meal of the day. right? And it should not be the biggest meal of the day. Ideally, the biggest meal of the day should be either lunch or early dinner. If you're somebody who doesn't have time for lunch, if you're busy in the office and you don't want to have a big lunch, if you decide to go for dinner or supper, have it earlier, right? 5:36 should be the time, and that could definitely be the bigger meal, right? But always leave two-third capacity of your stomach empty, so definitely do that. So this is the seventh myth that I'm breaking today. So, okay, Chetna has a question for me. So, because we were talking about protein, Chetna talks about, is it true or a myth that vegetarian is likely deficient in protein? So, again, Chetna, one of the things that I have seen in my practice is, vegetarian diets, unless you're mindful of having beans or some dals, a lot of my clients will have, for example, in the Indian diet, they'll have rotis and they'll have like a cauliflower as vegetable, or they'll have some, just a leafy green or something. So in that combination, you're not getting protein. But if you make sure that your diet has some kind of lentils or beans, that will give you sufficient protein. So vegetarians, if you plan a vegetarian diet, does not have to be deficient in protein. It's just that you're not mindful of getting enough protein from your diet as a vegetarian, right? So whether you're a vegan or a vegetarian, definitely, it's not that vegetarian protein is not going to work for you, or there are athletes who are vegan as well, so that's not the problem. It's just that you have to be mindful of having decent amounts of protein in your diet. You don't need to overdo it, but at least half a cup of dal or beans or lentils. Tofu is heavy to digest, so something fermented tempeh, if you can go for it, um, is one of the best things, right? Quinoa again is a high protein grain, so you could combine or make sure your diet has protein. So vegetarian diet can be deficient because you're just not combining it the right way, or you're not thinking about it, and that's what I've seen in my practice, but it need not be, right? So the eighth one again is something I have, it's my pet peeve. I just go crazy when people talk about, oh, I start my morning with a smoothie or a juice. I'll have a smoothie, I'll put protein powder, I'll put apple juice in it, I'll put yogurt in it, I'll put everything on the planet in it, right? So smoothies and juices are not the best way to get your nutrition, right? If you do vegetable juicing, that's a different thing, but again, you have to be mindful of your digestion. And fruit juices are extremely high sugar, you're losing the fiber, right, which is beneficial for your gut bacteria. So especially fruit juices. Orange juice does not have tons of vitamin C, it has tons of sugar. A cup of juice should not contain 40 grams of sugar, which it does, right? Even if it's from concentrate or no added sugar. So juices are not always healthy. This is a big myth. And smoothies are not helpful for anyone. A lot of the times, when you mix too many things, you're not absorbing the nutrients. You're not going to absorb the protein, nor the fish oil, nor the vegetables that you put in your smoothie if you're icing it, right? So smoothies, say no to it, right? Ideally have warm foods, that's going to be the best thing. But smoothies, juices are not the best way to get your nutrition. That's myth number 8. Twigtails, just give me 1 minute, I'm going to talk quickly, I'm going to go over my points and then I'll get to your question. So the ninth one, again, I've seen is something fantastic. It's like a big, big, big myth, and uh, fantastic, not in a good way, right? So I have so many clients who will decide they need to be gluten free without having any symptoms of gluten, right? So not everybody should eat gluten free, and dairy free is a big myth, right? Now, gluten and dairy are some of the most allergenic groups of foods we find today, right? So you could be reacting to whey protein or casein or lactose, right? Whey, casein are the milk proteins, lactose is the milk sugar. So you could be intolerant to any of these or all of these, right? At that time, you need to give up dairy, right? And gluten is a protein found in wheat, rice, spelt, and barley. In my practice, I've seen a lot of people to be wheat intolerant, right? And I've also seen a lot of people to be casein intolerant. Now, the interesting thing is that if your gut is impaired, then you will have problems with digesting gluten as well as dairy. But if you have a healthy gut, you should not go gluten free or dairy free. If you're having symptoms, 100% cut it out. But just because your friend is gluten free, do not go gluten free, because a lot of the packaged gluten free foods are high in sugars, right? They're not healthy. If you look at the label of a lot of gluten-free breads, they're just packed with potato starch and tapioca starch. And especially for somebody having a higher blood sugar, this is not the way to go, right? So get tested, get a food sensitivity test done before you decide to do any dietary changes or eliminate certain foods from your diet. That will be really beneficial, and you will know exactly what you're reacting to rather than taking everything out and experimenting. And I do a muscle test for food sensitivity testing. It is 30 to 45 minutes. It is not a pinprick or a scratch test. It can be done pretty fast in the comfort of my clinic. You can have the results right away, and it is safe for children as well as older people. There's no needles or anything involved. It's based on energy medicine. So if you are in Sarnia, close by, if you are bloated, if you're feeling gassy, if you have constipation or recurrent diarrhea or just feeling blah, give me a shout and I can book an allergy or a food sensitivity test for you. But if you are not sensitive or allergic, and if you don't have any symptoms, you do not have to go gluten free or dairy free. Not everyone on the planet has to be gluten free or dairy free, right? So this is the ninth one. And the 10th one that I've come across, and this is something that is a big problem for a few of my clients, is the fermented foods, right? So the kombucha trend has been there for a few years now, and it is getting popular every single day, right? Kefir or sauerkraut or kimchi, kombucha, we're talking about fermented foods. We're talking about pickles. There's so many lacto fermented foods that are getting more and more popular today, right? But fermented foods are not a must for everyone, especially if you are having impaired gut with excess acid built up, right? So if you have a lot of acid reflux, if you have ulcers, if you have histamine intolerance, this is something I see quite a bit in my practice, right? Histamine related issues. So you have gut issues, plus you're breaking out into hives and stuff, and certain foods would trigger more histamine release in the body. Fermented foods are absolutely to be avoided at that time, right? So fermented foods are going to be acidic, they are going to increase the pitta in your body, right? If you already have an ailment which is related to excess pitta, right, it's going to further provoke the pitta. So any bleeding disorders, or even fibroids or polyps, whether it's gastric polyps or intestinal polyps, I would be mindful of just eating tons of fermented foods, right? So be mindful of that. So that's my 10th myth, right? So I have covered 10 myths about food and nutrition that are ruining your health without you knowing about them. If you're watching this live, please in the comment section, let me know which one is the one myth that you have been a victim to, that you've tried and it did not work for you and you just felt trapped to because somebody was promoting it, right? Now and if you have any questions, post it in the comments, so I'll be answering the questions as well. So Twigtails is asking me a question: what if we feel hungry post dinner, right? And what source of protein would work if weak digestion? Would you suggest fish, eggs, soaked lentils, or soaked nuts in less quantity? So Twigtails, if you are hungry post dinner, right, one of the best things is you can have some, either like a warm beverage would be a good thing, right? You can always have something like a turmeric milk. Golden milk is something which is easily digestible, or you could make golden milk with coconut milk as well, right? And that, when you're adding the spices, it's going to get digested easily, because it's a liquid, it's not going to sit in your belly for a long time, right? So it has to be like a warm liquid would be ideal. If it's solid, it's going to take time to digest, right? So you don't want to eat anything for at least 3 hours before bedtime, otherwise it will just sit in your belly and not get digested. So golden milk, anti-inflammatory milk, taking a glass of almond milk, coconut milk, um, organic milk. If you're okay with milk, you can add some turmeric to it. You can add some kind of sweetener. Do not add honey to anything warm. You can add some maple syrup, right? um, you can add, yeah, maple syrup would be fine. Stevia, if you're using stevia, that's fine as well. Give it a stir and drink it, and usually that will satisfy you, right? That will satisfy that little bit of hunger, especially if you do coconut milk, which is also a little bit thicker, right? But use light coconut milk. Don't go for the full fat one at night, or dilute it with water. So that would be my suggestion. Now, protein sources would depend, right? Beans, lentils are some of the easiest to digest. Then you're looking at fish and eggs. Then you're looking at white meat, and then you're looking at red meat, right? So beef is harder to digest. Pork is the hardest to digest. Uh, if you're having, so ideally, lentils, you have to soak them. You can soak it in a spoon in water with 1 spoon of apple cider vinegar, and that should help make it better digested as well, right? So fish or eggs you can definitely have, but if you have a weak digestion, also limit the quantity, right? Have a small amount of fish, have maybe 1 egg instead of 2 or 3 eggs, and that would definitely help. I'm going to say a quick hi to Tara. I'm going to say a quick hi to Will, is that. And Chetna, can we have fruits right after a meal? So it's not suggested, right? If you've had a big meal and then you're having a fruit, it will create more fermentation in the system. You're not going to digest the fruit. Ideally, have fruit as a snack. So if you've had your lunch, if you had your dinner, if there are, in the time between lunch and dinner will be the time to have fruits, or sometimes starting your day with fruits and a little bit of nut on the side is a better idea as well, right? I'm going to say a quick hi to Isha. I have a meeting in another minute, so I'm going to hop off Instagram as well as Facebook and join the meeting. So thank you all for watching this live. I will be live every single day for this month. Hi Isha. I'm going to be live every single day for this month at 9 o'clock in the morning, except for the Wellness Wednesdays. That will be at noon. And I'm going to talk about nutrition every single day. So I'm going to say a quick bye and hop on to my other call. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic day. Bye for now.